And this interview is being done as part of the Pinecrest Oral History Project. How are you today, Susan?
Well, I'm just fine, thank you.
Good. Can you tell me about your family background? You know, maybe a little bit about your parents and where they came from and where you came from?
Well, my background, I guess it's a little Czechoslovakia town of Vrbovce, which means oak. We had a lot of oaks in the town, and they name it Vrbovce, means oak tree, and it's on the Moravian border. My father was a Moravian and mother was a Slovak. I was born 1896, March the 25th, and they told me it was on Palm Sunday. And that's how I became to be alive at that time.
What did your parents do?
My mother lived out. She was living in Vienna. She was working there, and my father died after I was born, about a couple of months after, so I didn't know my father. So 1898, my mother decided to go to America from Vienna, and that's where she went. And I stayed with my only grandmother. I don't remember my grandfather very vaguely, that I was maybe about 4 years old when he died. And also my great-grandmother died 1895. Those two I remember well. And then I stayed just with my grandmother that took care of me until 1907, when my mother demanded for my grandmother to send me over. She sent the money and everything, and my grandmother didn't want to, but she says, I want the child to be with me. She got married again.
How many years had passed between the time that she left you?
The time from where?
That she came to America, that your mother came to America.
Well, she came 1898, so came 9 years, because I was 7 when I came here, so it was 9 years past that she didn't see me, and that's why. And I came in June 13, 1907, and we landed from a boat in Battery Park from Ellis Island. And she came to claim me. We took a boat to Battery Park. That's where everybody that went to New York or any place around here got off. And then you were looking. And right at the Battery Park, we lived only 1 block away, because there were 8 homes that were private families, and they were out, and the houses were empty, and these immigrants that were before us, mothers and fathers, some of them rented those houses because they were at that time at only about $25 a month to live in them. And so that's where we were.
Did you come over on the boat by yourself?
I had a woman that was coming to this country, and she was in charge of me.
Well, can we clarify one point? You said you were born in 1896, right?
Yeah.
And you came in 1907.
Yeah.
So you were, if
11
years old.
That's what I said.
When you came. Okay.
I did. Till 11 years old I was when I came.
Mm-hmm.
And your mother must have been a stranger to you at that point.
Well, sure.
You didn't know her.
I didn't know her. And I don't think...
it wasn't the greatest either.
I don't think you ever have the feeling when your parents don't bring you up as you have for your grandmother. So I was crying half of the time for half a year to go back, And of course, my grandmother wrote an essay letter to my mother because I used to write by myself, and I asked the woman next door to give me the stamp. And then when she got the letter from my grandmother, she hit me. And I thought that was a fine thing to do. But that's what happened, you know. She didn't have other children, and you see the person, regardless if it's your mother or your father, they haven't got the responsibility of taking care of you for 11 years, well, they're not going to make a very...
Or the closeness that she had
Closeness.
with her. She and her grandmother were very happy together.
And we live all alone in a house, so that's what
It
happened.
was a farm area.
And then now, when I came right away, I said to myself, I was 11 years old, boy, I said, I have to find a job because I don't think I want to close in like that, you know, and listen all the time. If I didn't, and the first thing she told me I had to clean the house. Well, you know, that time there were 3 rooms, so she went to work 6 o'clock. The woman worked in the office buildings right across the way, 2 blocks away, and so I swept the front, you know, just the top. I didn't bother under the bed. And she came home, and she says, she lifted up the spread, and she said, what happened to that? But I didn't know. How did I know? You know, in Europe, I didn't know anything. My grandmother did everything for her. And everything, what you didn't do right, instead of them explaining to you, you know, they think that you have to know everything at 11 o'clock, 11 years old. So, but eventually then I started looking for a job.
At 11 years old.
And
you didn't go to school here at all?
I went to work for
Well,
one...
you have to...
Oh, ready? Well, I went to school for 1 season. Then I was 12 going on 13. And I was looking for a job because in New York, every place you looked, there was a sign, help wanted. Children, all the children get jobs because there were a lot of jobs. There was a bakery, you could just work a couple hours. There was a Spears and chewing gum, you could work there for a couple hours. There was a cigarette places where they brought in bushes of leaves, and you take the middle of the leaves out for the cigarettes that they make, but the middle of the big leaves you have to take out. So we did that. At the beginning, we got 10 cents an hour for about 2-3 weeks. 10 cents an hour you work. So that's what I did. And so 10 cents an hour. First day, first 1 or 2 days, I only made 10 cents. By the time your fingers get used to picking these, and you go from the top, you know how the middle of the thing falls. So that's what it is. Then I got disgusted. I said to myself, well, I don't want this now. And there was, I was very interested what the people on Broad Street screaming, hundreds of men around there are doing, because I thought they were going crazy. And what it was, the stock market people, you know that? And I follow where they were all going, you know, at certain time. And there was a restaurant there that they had, and you call that restaurant where...
Delmonico?
Delmonico, where all the big fellas that were gambling went. And they have another little, that was on the first floor, and on the street, on Broad Street, was an entrance to like a little luncheon. And while I was looking at it, I went in and I asked if there is anything for a job. And they said, no, you have to have, you have to have a working paper. But in the house where we lived, then after it was a 5-story house, one of the women worked there in the kitchen, and I didn't know. So I asked her, And she took me there and asked the boss if he could give me a job. So he said yes, she could stay in front of the cashier and give these checks out. They only from 10 cents to $1. Anybody that comes in to eat, give them these checks, and that's what I did. And then as I see what they were doing behind the counter, serving coffee and that, and I asked him if I could try it. He says, if you surely could. And that's how I got then the job behind the counter, and that's the way it went. And from there I went in a place again. There was a bakery on my street. They were a German couple. They had bakery and little restaurant there on Cortlandt Street, and there were two ferries from Cortlandt Street and Liberty Street going to Jersey, bringing people and back and forth. And I noticed on Friday, everybody was leaving packages, and they were buying in that bakery and restaurant all day. So I went in there, asked for a job. And he says, yes, you could have. You helped me. They were Alsatians couple, German couple. And they gave me a job, and I was helping Mr. Alsatier selling these things and wrapping it up. First only wrapping it up until I got how much they are, you have to learn and all that. And his wife was partly doing the waiting there. And that's the way from one job to another I went until I landed up on 59th Street. I landed up on 59th Street. Next to a hotel was a restaurant. And I asked if they needed any help. And he asked me who am I, where I live, and everything. I tell how old I was. By then, that time, I was already 15 years old because I worked in that bakery quite a while, year and a half. And it was a wonderful thing because not only they let me wait on the people there, and I made $1 every day, sometimes 75 cents, sometimes $1.50, which was a lot of money at that time. Because butter was only 10 cents a half a pound, and milk, 8 or 6 cents a quart. So that's the way, and I saved my money. Yeah, that's how I got along. And then I never went back to school because the money, I wanted to be independent from my stepfather there, and I wanted to be on my own. So that's what happened. But you could do an awful lot. What I was surprised that I didn't speak the language, and then from that restaurant I was looking at the Broadway shops, and then I went into a lunchroom to have little, also very curious. I went to some very fine restaurants there. But I look in the window if they have ladies there that you could go for lunch, have a little sandwich or something, just to be inquisitive of what it is. So in this restaurant, I asked the waitress that was there, I says, you think I could get a job here? Well, she said, I don't think they need anybody, but you could ask. So at the cashier, their owner said, well, would you like to learn how to be a cashier? Oh, I certainly will. So he says, you'll be my assistant. I'll just show you how. You give the change, which I already knew that there was $1, and how the register was. And I worked there. Then from there, when I was there about 3/4 of a year, I went uptown. My first place was 72nd Street. It was a beautiful restaurant owned by C&L people, and they had one on 81st Street. And right next to it was a Miller women's fashion shop, and the cheapest dress they had $100, and it was connected with the restaurant. The entrance from the shop, the girls that were sales ladies could come in and everything, and I was working there. Well, in that place I worked until I got married. But I was so lucky. Those girls always would come because I was slim, and just the fashion was always, the girls were very few, and they could buy the dresses for almost for nothing after, and many of the girls sold me the dresses cheap, $15, $20, that they were $80, $60 at the beginning. But it was always, after the season. So that's how I did. And I worked in that place until I was 26 years old for the company.
When did you meet your husband?
Oh, I met my husband 1915. I joined the Czechoslovak athletic. They call it the Falcon Organization, which is, we call it Sokol. It was a gymnastic thing. So I joined that. I joined the Glee Club. I joined the, the theater piece. And then I was a member for, until today I'm a member of that organization. We had, that time, the organization, 25,000 people. And I met my husband in the gym classes, and he was 6 years older. He was 30 when we got married. I was 26. See? And he was also a gym teacher. And eventually, I became the vice president of the organization 1938. The 25,000 membership at vice president of the organization.
It's quite an honor.
25,000 people, 25,000 members. And I went to Europe. It was the first time I went back, representing the organization, because we had exhibition of gymnastics in Prague. But there were other nationalities joining and everything, so that's how I made my way in America.
Wonderful.
But it was not easy. It was hard work. It was hard work, and I saved my money. I went to Coney Island on Saturday and Sundays, and sometimes, and not only I, but some of my friends, one or two of us would go, and we made easy $15, $20 in the day, and we were saving money, because we know that when you have money, you could quit your job. If you don't have any for a week or month, you still have, but I live with my parents anyway, but you still could do things what you want. I used to love to go to operas. I used to love to go to shows, and that's what happened.
When you got married, where did you live?
When I got married, I had money. I got married 1922, April 29. And my husband lived in Yonkers. He lived in Yonkers with his sister. And when we got married, I bought the furniture, cost me over $1,000, dining room, bedroom set, kitchen set. And then my sister-in-law said, my mother-in-law from Europe came when she heard her son got married. She wrote he should wait until she gets here, but he didn't. Well, we got married before, and when she came, she knew I had saved almost $3,000, plus I bought all the furniture and everything for our apartment, and she said to her daughter, why don't you sell the lot to Sam and me, and we build a house, and Susie has the money. So that's what we did. They used my money to put down $1,000 for the builder before he started. The house was $11,000. And
In Yonkers.
23 in Yonkers, up in Brimo, La Avenue, if you know where that is, up in Brimo. And that was 1923 when my oldest daughter was married. March the 25th, we moved there April the 1st to the new house already, which was on 3 floors. I got my first floor because there were only 3 of us with the baby. My sister-in-law was a widow. She had a son and daughter. She got the middle. And the third we rented for the mother to get the income, and she lived with the daughter there for a while. But the 1925, the parkway came through where our house was standing. So we got $14,000 for it. And we moved it to Lockwood Avenue. We bought a lot there, and my mother-in-law, then she was here till 1925. When my son was born, he was born February 20. Then she took her money, went to Europe, and that's what happened. So everybody was in a very good financial situation, having a home, private home to ourselves, and getting a rent from that, and that's what happened. And we stayed there till the crash came, 1929, the bankruptcy of the stock market. And we had a mortgage on it to my brother-in-law. He was a bootlegger. And he had a number of the houses that he gave to his relatives mortgage, and he wanted everybody to pay them immediately the money, because the government didn't control them. If anybody has a mortgage, they could completely, without anything to take your property away, and that's what he did too that time. So then we got a job in a clubhouse where there was a beautiful living quarters up on the top, on the floor, where was a dancing hall and a restaurant there. So that's where I worked with my husband for 4.5 from 1940, let's see, 1940 till 45. 1940 to 45, and the Mrs. Denton was principal of the school on Lockwood Avenue where we had the house, and the school was right next to it. And she owned the house right down here and owned this property, the 2 houses. And we were looking for the house. We see it in the paper that there was a little cottage for sale. We went over, and what a surprise when we walked, and it was the principal of the school. You remember that, Mira? So she sold this place for us, but it was on a garage and 3 rooms for $5,000 to us, and that's here.
Why did you decide to move from Yonkers?
Well, because the thing was the price of the house. And I figured, I always said when I got married, my children have to go to college regardless, even if I have to scrub the floors. So I saw in this is what I'm going to pay, $3,500 for this place, half, and half I take a mortgage, and I could send my children to college. And Olga was the first one that went while we were at the clubhouse yet, 1940. She graduated already when we bought this little place, and then Mildred went right, and then Emil went after that. In 1952 he graduated, and she graduated 1948.
So the children were older, and college was a consideration then.
College, not consideration, but must in my mind.
A must, yeah.
Well, also in 45 was after the war, and it was very difficult to find housing, to find houses. They were at a premium, and so they had trouble finding
an
a
apartment,
house, and this was very fortunate in that it was available, and Mrs. Denton gave it to them, so to speak, because we did go to that school and my brother was a veteran.
Yeah.
Had you heard anything about Hastings before you moved here? Did you know anything about Hastings?
Well, I didn't know anything about Hastings, but I know that this was Hastings because we used to go to Tarrytown quite a lot. There's a soccer club in Tarrytown, and we used to go there. But there was no transportation here yet like it is now. This was a road coming and going over this place, but this wasn't there, the wall yet. It was just a plain road there.
Broadway, you're talking
Broadway,
about.
yeah. So that's what happened there, and that's all the things. And here we are.
When you moved into the house, how many people moved in with you?
In here?
Yeah, you and how many children? And
Well, just my husband, myself, and Mildred.
No,
And
but I was in school.
she was in school, and Olga, she was married
Had
already.
graduated.
Oh, she-
44, she was in Washington.
She was in Washington. She got a job at the embassy there, French embassy, I think, and Polish embassy. And Amy just came home from 3 years of Pacific as in the Navy. And so
And he
just-
he was applying to school, so he was waiting to go to college.
to go to
then,
college.
too.
So he went 1945, after when he came, 45. So the two of them had 1 year together, right, or two?
Yeah, none of us were really home here when
None
he
of
moved
them
in.
were here. And so it was wonderful to just live in this little 3-room over the garage for us, just Daddy and I. In the meantime, I went to Yonkers General Hospital when we leave the clubhouse. I went to for volunteer work, and of course quite a few doctors knew me, and they said, "Well, why volunteer work?" The cafeteria they are opening the Yonkers General Hospital was, and they asked me because they know I did catering at the hall, if I would take the job. Well, I says I would only take it if I don't work on Saturday and Sunday because they have to work in the hospital, everybody. I said I wouldn't consider working that time. But the dietitian and the superintendent said to me, fine. So I got the job from 11 to 6, but when I got through at 1 o'clock, I could go home till 4 and then come back and serve the dinner for the doctors and nurses. And that's how I got along.
now you said that this was like the carriage house. Can you describe what it was the carriage house to and about that other little house across the street that you were showing me out the window?
This was the chauffeur's house.
The chauffeur's house.
This was a chauffeur house. There was no little house, only that one, and that was not little. And this house was here for the woman when I came in here.
Who lived there when you came in?
I don't know her name. She was a millionaire. And she had
No, not when you came.
the house was,
Didn't Kronk live here then?
yeah, but not when...
Before that. Before that.
No, not before. After we came here, Kronk lived here. She was, this house was empty, Milka, when we came. And then only Miss Kronk was living there when we came in, because he bought the whole house.
Well, Abby was asking who originally lived in the house. Was that your question, Abby? Do you know her?
I didn't know her.
No, but you know of her?
But no, nobody else, because the house was empty until we bought this, and the two teachers from number 5 school, Miss Malcolm and Miss Kronk, lived there, because the principal of that school, she owned that, and she told them to come and live here in that big house, and they did. See, the principal, she was there, and the son, he was her chauffeur. He was not exactly her son. He was adopted fellow. So it was in the 3 of us in these houses were connected from the school.
Were most of these houses along Pinecrest Parkway that
This
are here
house
now?
across the way was here already. When we came 45, there was a German couple living there with 3 children. They live here about a year after we came here. Then he was transferred with his job was transferred. He went to Illinois with 3 children. And that house, this one was empty. That house was empty when we came in.
That's where Mesmer's lived.
Mesmer's lived. Mesmer's.
39.
That a Jewish couple came and rented it, but the house was not built very good, and they bought it at the end of autumn, and it was very cold. So the wife had to sit in a fur coat in the living room or any place else. So one day he came here, he didn't find her. She said, "I'm going." She left a note, "I'm not going to be here 1 minute. You better sell it." And that's what he had to sell it again. And he sold it to
Mayors.
Mayors. That's right, Mayors. The couple bought it. They came from Long Island. Mayors bought the house. Yeah, Mayors.
But also, didn't you say that the house across the street, 43, was built by Mr. Horn?
Yes, Mr. Horn. That was built by Mr. Horn, and the house where he lived, he built it for himself. And he lived there, just Mrs. Horn and Mr. Horn. He was the architect. I never met, and I never met the maid all day because that was empty. The Turners bought that house just year before we came in here. In 1930, we came here in 1945. They came here just year before, Turners. They came from south someplace. Turners bought the house.
That's where Dahlbergs live now.
Dahlbergs live now. And the house is next to Dahlbergs is the one I told you, German were living there.
And where was the maid?
The maid was in the Dahlbergs' house.
And
And
what was the story about her?
well, nothing. That she went she wanted to move to England to get married and stay in England. But the woman that owned this house that she worked for, she says, "Now, how would you like if I make a little house for you across the street and you bring your husband here?" And they did. But when I came, they were gone. So was the woman that died. And they went back to England.
And
And,
also then this house was the chauffeur's house for the woman who lived next door. So she had the chauffeur living here and the maid across the street,
Yeah.
and she owned a lot of the property.
She owned about 5, 6 lots all the way up here. All these little houses were.
And do we have her name at all?
No, I don't
No.
know their name.
Okay.
I don't know their. The only name I know is that big don't know
Association.
anything about it.
Oh.
Mildred belonged to it. I didn't.
Well, I think it was founded because there were concerns of things happening in the neighborhood, and they felt that they needed to discuss things as a group. Now, I'm not sure whether it was Mr. Henderson, who lived down on the drive, was one of the founders, and I really can't remember what year it was, but we did meet from time to discuss issues, and what those issues were at this point, I really couldn't tell you. And we still have the association, and that's the way it is operated now, too.
And in that association, it was pretty much blacks and whites in the association?
Oh, yes, anybody who lived in the neighborhood was
Invited.
eligible to be a member, and I don't know whether we pay $2 a year now.
$5.
I don't think they even,
$5 always a year.
Yeah, $5, and everybody was invited to attend or to join if you so chose to do.
Now, at one point, you had neighbors who were black, didn't you?
Yes, I did James's.
The Jameses. Which house did they live
Right,
in?
this big house.
The big house.
50 Pinecrest Parkway.
Can you talk about your relationship with them? Whether you
My
were
relations
friends or...
with all the neighbors were very wonderful. I say good morning to everybody. And I have no complaints about anybody in the neighborhood.
But you didn't get together
No.
to go over to their house for the evening?
I have my neighbor next door. She had her two nieces came from Haiti. I
She was
invited them for tea. They came in, and Mrs. James would come in, and I would go there maybe a couple times, not too many. And the husband, James, was very friendly with my husband. When he was sick, he came over all the time to see him, how he was. Yes, I have no.
That
And
sounds
also
like
with Mrs. Bourne. Every single day, almost, we talk every day. She used to take a walk back and forth with the dog, and we talk to her. But
Were there residents who were opposed to the idea of having an integrated neighborhood?
I have never heard anybody, I never discussed it with anybody, and I never heard anybody discuss it with me. Never.
And we've never had any problems here at
No,
all in this
no.
neighborhood, any racial problems at all. Actually, it's probably one of the most well-integrated neighborhoods.
Yeah. But you see, all these people that came here were pretty wealthy and educated. We have Dr. Clark here, right?
The
Mrs.
Adamses.
Adams is a wonderful couple. You could, when you go there, you could ask them about me. They would tell you. Also, Mrs. Vaughan had a degree from 3 different. She was a wonderful person. We discussed things every day.
And then the doctor that lived on the drive, there were a
And
couple of other families.
And a couple of others, but I don't even know the others because they don't come this way. See,
Yes.
that's
But
all.
they were all professionals.
All professional. We really didn't have.
Did
They-
you, by any chance, have any photos of any, like from the 40s or the 50s that of this neighborhood at all, or what it might have looked like,
What?
what this
Photos.
neighborhood might have looked like?
Oh,
Photographs.
No, it didn't change much because the houses there were only, the new houses is this one and next door, and the other two right there was there, only they little painted different. And then the big house now, the big house,
Capuanos.
Capuano, that's, this is only built about 2 years ago, and that's about all. And the other street, those 3 houses were there.